Basically started with Ezoe-san, this new project of service departments. And we went from 250 rooms when I started to 1,200 rooms.
Today I'm pleased to have a young woman here by the name of Ruth. And she has been in Japan. I don't know how long, but we're going to find out how long she's been here. But I did find out that she has a company that basically brings together people that are coming to Japan and the people that are already here in Japan and help them mesh together to find out what the different products are, the different activities, different places they can go to. So what we're going to do from this point on is talk with Ruth.
Yay.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Lance. I don't think I need to say anything more. You just explained it so well. Thank you.
That's something I'm trying to get better at doing. Something I've never prided myself on doing is really introducing people.
Yeah.
Because I've usually been the one introduced.
Right, exactly.
Makes it really a hard thing to do. It's not so easy to do all the time.
No, it's not easy. And I think that's the way you can really support people.
That's
is
right.
by being able to express their value
That's right.
proposal to others.
That's why
it's
I
a
admire
wonderful
that.
thing.
I admire that now when I have people. I had one person introduce me one time and I almost didn't have to go up there because he made me sound so good. I was starting to believe everything he was saying. It was so nice.
You know.
So tell me, Ruth, where were you born?
I was born in North Carolina in the USA.
Where in North Carolina?
In Durham.
In Durham. How far is that from Salem?
Oh, okay. So I was only there until I was 1.
Okay,
my
well,
dad
okay,
went
well,
to
let's go
Duke,
on. So
my
we
dad
can-
went to Duke University.
All right.
He's a pastor.
Okay.
And so after that, well, my grandfather was a congressman from the great state of Oklahoma. And he served in Washington, D.C. for
This is your
27
father's
years.
father?
My father's dad.
Okay.
And so my father's dad, my grandfather, wanted my dad, as the eldest son, to also get into politics. And my dad didn't want to. He wanted to be a preacher.
He said, I want to talk from the highest point.
Exactly. I want to spread the word,
So tell
not
me,
your word.
When you were small, you went from North Carolina to where?
Yeah, so when I was 1, then he went to seminary because, as you know, to be a pastor, you have to go to seminary. So he went to seminary in Pasadena, California. So I was there until I was 3.
All right.
Yeah, I don't remember much
You don't
of it.
remember that?
That's where my sister was born.
Okay.
And then we all moved to Hawaii.
Hawaii.
So I consider myself from Hawaii.
You all of your adolescent and
Everything.
young adult was
Until,
in Hawaii?
Yes, so I grew
The
up
main
in
island?
Hawaii. Oahu, yes.
Oahu.
Yes. So I went to Mililani High School. And then after that, I went to university in Boston. But in the middle, just to give you an idea of my experience, when I was 12, my dad decided he wants to take like a sabbatical. So he took a 1-year sabbatical from the church and went to Scotland. So I followed him to Scotland and I went to primary school in Scotland for 1 year from Hawaii. So when I went to Scotland at 12 years old and I went to the regular primary school, I didn't think they were speaking English. I was like, Mom, they're not speaking English here. And she's like, they are speaking English. Listen very closely. They are speaking English. And I realized I have an accent, they have an accent, you know.
That's when you realized people had accents.
And that just opened my whole mind to the world. The world is so big. And I think that's what started my journey that ended up getting me to Japan.
Well, explain this. When you went to Scotland with your father, was it just you and him?
No, it was our whole family.
Oh,
so
the whole family.
by
So it
that
wasn't
time,
just him. Because you made it sound like your dad went over there and you decided to go
no,
with him.
we all went. And by that time, my brother had been adopted from Korea. So I had a Korean brother.
Is he younger than you and your sister? Is he younger than?
He's younger. He was 3.
Okay.
So it was me, my sister, my little brother, and my mother and father, and we went to Scotland and got to try all the different kinds of foods and experience that really cold weather, and it was just so beautiful, and I loved it so much. And
Was it just 1 year?
yeah, just 1 year.
Okay.
And then I went back to Hawaii, and after that went to intermediate school, high school, and then went to Boston for college, and then came here.
What kind of child were you in elementary school? Were you more academic or were you more sports-minded?
I would say probably more academic. But I really did like sports. So I've always done, I mean, I don't know if you consider it a sport, but I've been a cheerleader for,
That's
you
a
know, high
sport.
school, college. And then when I came to Japan, I was in like the company league cheerleader. So I've cheerled in Tokyo Dome and stuff. It's really fun. Anyway, so that's part of my history. But yes, I've always been very active and into sports. But I would say, I guess more academic. At least that's what the teachers told me I was good at.
Right.
So I kind of focused on reading and writing. And that's what I liked.
Okay, what kind of reading did you like to do?
Well, I was actually reading The New Republic when I was 12. Can you believe
What?
that? I don't know why.
What made you do? Yeah, I was going to say, what made you do that?
Yeah, so my dad would get all these magazines because he also loved to study and, you know, keep up with world events and things. So there was Time Magazine, New Republic, all that kind of those books. And then my dad would read us J.R. Tolkien. So he would do all the voices and read us stories. So we went through all the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit with my dad reading it to us, doing the Gandalf voice and all that. So I was really into reading from the beginning. And I guess from the very early times, I was really interested in world issues and in different trains of thought. Kind of got me in trouble when I went to university because I was reading that when I was little. And that was never in our conversation. So I would read words and I didn't know how to pronounce them in English. Okay. So literally in college, I told my friend, oh, this restaurant has hors d'oeuvres. We got to go there. Because I'd never heard it spoken. And like Chopin, I had never heard that spoken before, so I was calling it Chopin, you know?
Chopin,
but
right,
it's because I had been reading these things.
Yes.
And I was an avid reader. I would come home from school, put my earphones on, listen to music, and read.
What'd your mother do?
My mother, most of the time when I was small, she was actually getting her higher degrees, so she would get a master's degree. She was a nutritionist for a while. Okay. She was really early on involved in the AIDS issue. So she was an educator for HIV and AIDS, like really early on. So that's kind of what got me into being on the, what is it called? The Secretariat for the International Conference HIV and AIDS in Yokohama that they had like in 95 or something like that. So I worked on that for about a year. But yeah, she, you know, as a minister's wife too, very thoughtful about the community and how she can help, you know, people that need help. So yeah.
So how are mom and dad doing right now?
They're doing really well. So, you know, in the middle we had a little excitement where there was a huge scandal and my dad accidentally had like a sort of big affair kind of thing and got kicked out of the church and then got reinstated. And
you want to say all this? It's okay?
It's okay, it's okay. I don't think he would mind. Okay. And so everything's good now. That's probably why he wouldn't mind. So everything has been forgiven. We get together as a very, you know, kind of, how do you even describe it? Like a mixed up kind of family.
Are they still in Hawaii?
They're still in Hawaii. So my mother is still in Hawaii. My dad is still in Hawaii.
Wait, you said they're separate? They're not together?
They're separate. So he's remarried to the lady that he met. And which is fine because it's all good now. Okay. And they have 3 sons and I consider them my brothers and we all get together for reunions and my mother's there, my dad's there, you know, his wife is there.
How old were you when they separated?
That was when I was in first year in college. Yeah.
How'd you take it?
It was really hard because it was totally unexpected.
No clue.
Absolutely no clue. No one had any clue.
Your mom didn't know. Your sister didn't know. He didn't confide in anyone.
No. Maybe he did confide in his best friends, but
I mean, no one that he was.
No, we didn't.
That was interesting. Okay.
It was interesting, and now that I'm an adult, I can totally understand how it happens, why it happens. It actually happened to me too, in my personal life. So I'm not married. Yeah, so I was married.
How long were you
to
married?
A Japanese guy, 20 years. And
do you have children?
I do. I have 2 kids.
How old are your kids?
My son is going to be 29. How does that even happen?
Is he here?
No, he's based in Copenhagen. He works at Bain & Company, a big consulting firm.
I know Bain & Company,
yeah.
Yes.
So he works out of Copenhagen. So he's in Denmark.
I'm assuming by the way you said your son, you have a daughter as well.
I do. I have a daughter. She's in Japan at the moment, but she travels around. She does social media. So she's basically in charge of the social media strategy at my company, Jarman.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Very exciting life.
Okay. So you were married for 20 years and then you just separated.
Yes.
You just decided to separate.
It was not, I didn't want to, but yes, it happened. Okay. But, you know, I mean, I feel like just to give one comment about my family and also about my life, is that, you know, I feel like when you blame and then when you also are angry about something, the one who hurts is you, right? That's been the best thing that I've learned through all of this, is that forgiveness and love, it really can, like, you know how people say love wins, right? Ai wa katsu, right? So I really believe that that's true. So if you take things and, you know, you go through these really painful moments, but it really like helps you grow. And the fact that my family can get together, we're getting together next month too in Hawaii, that we can all get together, everybody in the same room, and laugh and eat.
No, now explain to me. When you say get together, your father and his wife?
Yeah.
and his
and
kids,
my mother and his
and-
kids and my
that's
siblings.
Beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yeah, so that's why I can talk about, it was a difficult time. Everybody knows about it. It was a huge scandal, but I mean, we got through it and we became better people for it.
Is he still part of the church?
Yes. So
Okay.
he actually, he's not as active. He's more retired, but he does, I guess you would describe it as charity work. It's called Common Grace in Hawaii. And the concept is so good. Basically, he started out, so when he went back to Hawaii with his family, so they were living in Oita in Kyushu for a very long time. And then his kids started to get older.
Wait, hold on. Now explain again. Your father?
Yeah. So my dad's wife is from Oita.
Oita. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Good, okay.
So they were living in Oita
Who's
my dad and his wife, and when they had their 3 kids. They were living in Oita,
Okay,
my dad.
okay.
Yeah.
So he
And
left Hawaii, went
he
to
left
Japan.
Hawaii, went to Japan, and was living there a while. And then when his kids started to get into the elementary school age, it starts to get difficult with the whole juken and what are you going to do? Are you going to send them to international school? Are you going to keep them in Japanese school? I mean, I went through the same thing. And he sort of decided that in the Oita area, there weren't really any options for international schooling, right? So he decided, okay, this is the time to go back to Hawaii. So let's go. We had a house there, went back to Hawaii. And when he went back to Hawaii, the first thing he started to do, because he was getting a little bit older and his kids were in elementary school, the same elementary school I went to, Pearl Ridge Elementary School, he decided to volunteer and go read stories to the kids, like he
So
did
you
with
did
me.
too, you're right.
Yes. So he would go, he became Uncle Jay, and he would go, I think, every week and read stories to them. And what he started to notice is that at the back of the group, there are little kids that are getting left behind. Maybe they come from broken families, they're not really paying attention. And he started to think, and then Columbine happened. The Columbine thing.
The first time, yes.
And he was like, okay, how do we embrace these children from very early on and let them know that they're seen and let them know that they're loved? And that's when he started Common Grace. And basically what
Now,
they
Common
do,
Grace is what?
it's his NGO that he has in
Okay.
Hawaii. So what he does is he speaks with the teachers and the principals of the schools, and they try to figure out who are the elementary kids that are kind of getting left behind, that, if left alone like this could start getting into trouble, and he always talked about like people who are sitting in the back pews of the church, like those are the most important people that you really need to engage with. So kind of the same idea, right? And so then he would match these little kids with high schoolers who would basically, the thing is they go and meet them every week, same day, same time. And they play with them, help them with their homework, talk to them, they're their friend. So what they're trying to tell those little kids is there's at least one person in your life who is going to show up at the same time every week. You can depend upon them. And so these little kids, he's been doing it so long, they've grown up and now they're the mentors for the little kids in the elementary. So he, it's a very small activity, but I think they work with over 100 schools now. And they've worked with all these different little kids, and it's an impact that's being made in a very small corner of the United States or of the world, but it's meaningful.
Now, what is it called? Common
Grace.
Common Grace. That is.
So one of those little kids could be the next Obama.
You never know.
Because
You never
Obama
know.
grew up in Hawaii.
He sure did.
And he might have been one of those left behind
That's
kids.
right. No,
So,
he wasn't left behind.
well, but
No, right.
in
But I
his
understand what you mean.
situation, like
Right.
I also feel that way because in Hawaii, it's such a melting pot. The most of the local schools, like a haole kid like me, a white kid like me, is an extreme minority, and we get teased and stuff. Nothing compared with anything that goes on in the mainland.
Of course.
But it is a place where certain kids can get a little bit left behind. So I'm so proud of my dad for doing that.
That's so nice.
Helping
That
so
is
many kids,
nice.
yeah.
So tell me, now you get into high school and you start honing the subjects you're really interested in.
Yes.
What were they?
So when I got into high school, unfortunately at that time, teachers would really encourage, especially girls that are good at reading and writing, to stick with that. And they would say, you don't have to do math, just stick with what you're good at, the reading and writing. Because girls are good at reading and writing, boys are good at math, And I really wish, because they didn't even make me I've never taken trigonometry. I didn't go past algebra, like high-level algebra. I really wish I had. Like, I would like to study math now. But anyway, so I really focused on reading and writing. turns out I was a very good speaker, so I was in speech contests. I got into tennis, and then I found cheerleading, and I just loved cheerleading.
What about it did you love? What about it did you love?
Well, I'm also like my dad, performer, get out there, get to wear a cute outfit, dance. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with cheerleading. That's like the best thing. And then cheerleading, everybody sees you, so you get to be friends with everybody. And that leads to being homecoming queen and things like that. So,
which
yeah,
you were?
I was homecoming queen twice in high school and college. But yeah, that's rare. I don't think there's many people who can say that.
You didn't do gymnastics?
No. So the cheerleading at the time was mostly dance.
Okay.
So we would go to cheerleading
they
camps.
Didn't do the throwing and stuff like
no,
that.
No, when they were doing where you like lob
Throw
somebody in the air and
exactly.
catch them like that.
Yes.
I forget what that's called, like a basket throw or something.
Throw, you're
right. Basket throw. That was just starting when I graduated college.
That would be the most. That was a big thing to see someone do that.
Exactly. It was a really big thing, and like flip in there.
Right, and if they flipped, oh wow.
Yeah. We were much more like the dancing type, which I really, really liked. So
and the rhyming and
and I get to like choreograph things. And when I came to Japan, so I joined this big company called Recruit.
Who doesn't know Recruit?
Yeah,
they had some problems, but still.
They did. So Ezoe-san, who was the center of the problem, became my mentor. I understand that in Japan, they say the deru kui ga tatakareru, right? Like tatakareru. And so the nail that sticks out is going to be hammered down. And I think Ezoe-san was a perfect example of that, where his company was growing so fast and he was doing so well. And he was a guy who kind of bucked the system. Like, he went to Todai, Tokyo University, and when he graduated, he was already like had his own little sales action going on. So he didn't join a big company like all of his friends, and he was already making 30 times what anybody else was making at the time. So I feel like he kind of bucked the system the whole way, and it kind of came out and got him at the end. But he was a really strong person, and he was a genius manager, and he just read Peter Drucker like there's no tomorrow kind of thing. So I was lucky enough to work directly with him for about 12 years in real estate later on. And then he kind of took me under his wing when I joined the company. He wasn't there because he got arrested a month before I joined the company. So I was there, and he was kind of present, but he wasn't in the company at that time. And I was in Recruit for 4 years, and they had an American football team. And I'm like, well, I did cheerleading in America. And they're like, could you start one here? Because they didn't have cheerleaders yet.
Wait. No, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yeah,
because
sorry.
I'm just saying, you were in high school, the subject you were cheerleading, you like that. But then you went to college.
Yes.
Where?
At Tufts University in Boston. And I studied
why'd you go to
international.
Tufts?
Well, there was one really clear reason is because I applied. I was coming from public Mililani High School in Hawaii, and in that high school, I was like top class, president of the student body, best grades. Like, they were like, you'll get in anywhere, my counselor. So I applied to Brown, Duke, and Tufts. Those are the only three.
The only three.
Yeah, the only three that I applied to, because I'll get in anywhere.
Did they all accept you?
No.
Only
so
Tufts.
The only one that accepted me was Tufts, which was actually a blessing in disguise. My dad had gone to Duke, so I was legacy. So we're like, maybe I might get into Duke. Didn't. But I got into Tufts. They're very international. They look for people from all different backgrounds. And so I went to Tufts and I studied international relations, which is, again, sort of the reading and writing side. And I really thought, man, I would love to be a diplomat. And my grandfather had been in politics, so I was thinking, man, I'd really like to be, I would like to be a diplomat, not a politician in the U.S. I would like to be a diplomat. Yeah. But then, things happened, and I joined Recruit, and I started to realize.
In the U.S. you joined Recruit?
Yeah, so I had studied Japanese, come to Japan to study Japanese in Nagoya at Nanzan University. Yeah, during college. So
your first year, second year?
Third year. So I took a year off. I mean, not a year off. I did a 1 year study abroad.
But what was the interest in Japan, and you'd never been here?
Yeah, so that's another very clear reason. Because at Tufts, you have to be pretty good at a second language in order to graduate with an international relations degree. Okay. They're really strict. I mean, it's a really good program they have there. So I tried German first. And I was like, okay, German, close to English. It was so hard. I couldn't get German. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And that's when my parents split, and it was like really shocking
That's
for me.
right. It was your
like
first
right around
year,
that
first
time.
year,
So
second year?
yeah, I almost like left college to go take care of my mom and stuff. But so my grades went down. The counselor called me in. Are you okay? And I said, this is happening. And they let me, drop my German class. That was the most stressful one. And then I was like, wait a minute. I grew up in Hawaii. When I was little, I was watching Jinzo Ningen Kikaida, with no subtitles. Like we would watch it in Japanese. And there's all these Japanese tourists in Hawaii. So when you go to Waikiki, there's onna on the door, otoko on the door. And I'm like, maybe I could get Japanese. So I went to my first Japanese class. And the Japanese teacher was telling everybody, okay, repeat after me. Da-di-do-de-do. And all my mainland friends were like, ra-re-ru-re-ru. I was the only one who could say da-di-do-de-do. And she's like, you're pretty good. And I'm like, wait, what? If I'm good, I'm going to try this, Japanese. So I started Japanese, and I got it like that because my ears must have gotten used to it when I was little. And then I went to Nagoya to study for a year, and they had to start a new class for all of us that had gone to Japan. Japanese was kind of the up-and-coming language at that time. And that's how I started Japanese.
What years are we talking about right now? Is this the 80s?
That would be 1987,
I was thinking so.
86.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it. Yeah.
And that was during the bubble economy.
That's right,
so
just before it burst, yes.
It's like, whoa, if you can get a job in Japan, you're so lucky. So I was in the university cafeteria after coming back from Japan, reading the Tufts University Daily.
What was it like for you? Let's get into what it was like for you when you came the first time. Yeah. How many students came with you?
There were about 9 of us altogether from Tufts, and I purposely chose Nagoya because I thought it'd be farther away from any English. Like I thought I'd get much better practice. And I was also an aerobics instructor in university and everything, so I taught aerobics in Japan. And I actually felt more comfortable in Japan than I had in Boston.
Why?
Coming from a Hawaii background. When you're in Hawaii, if you've ever been, you see everybody's all mixed and so many people look Japanese and whatever. So when I came to Japan, I felt I had more in common with Japan than I did with people in the East Coast of the United States. So I felt very comfortable here.
You know what? I'm just gonna guess what did that for you psychologically. You grew up all the time being a minority.
Exactly.
The only one. So then you learned to get comfortable with that and started feeling good. Then you go to Boston, you see a whole bunch of you, and you say, wait, I don't like this so much.
Like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. I mean, you might have to cut this out, but it was really weird because, and when I tell my Japanese friends, they're like, me too. Like, when I went to the East Coast, at first, I really couldn't tell the difference between Bill, Bob, George, and Fred. Like, everybody looked alike to me. Yes. And, some people from the mainland will say that happens to them in Japan, but I'm like, no, not me. So it's where you grew up,
and
it's what you're used to.
Start paying attention to.
Yes, exactly.
And where you got your fondness from, your love, your associations.
Yeah, and the food, and just the manner.
The mannerism, right.
Yeah, so in Japan, you have this thing where you don't really speak so directly, and we also have that in Hawaii, where you kind of like beat around the bush. You don't really say, why are you saying it that way? That's wrong. You wouldn't say that. Whereas in Boston, in Hawaii we have a habit, kind of like Japanese, where you say nantoka nantoka ne. In Hawaii we say, oh yeah, we say yeah a lot. Like, you want to go to the beach? Yeah, we would say that. And so my friends in Boston would be like, yeah, like teasing me, like really direct teasing, which I wasn't used to. And so.
And you're feeling bad because you're being serious. You're not trying to be mean.
Yeah, and in Japan, when you do that, people would be like, kawaii ne. Like, that's so cute. And so it was a sort of a different approach. Like, Japanese people, I mean, I've learned more over these 35 years, but in Japan, it's basically, you're really considering the other person's feeling before you say anything. And I think that that's very similar in Hawaii. So that made me feel really comfortable.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. So then you go back to the States.
Mm-hmm. Open the newspaper. So I'm in the
But you have a year,
Tufts
you have
University.
2 years left?
Yeah, I have 1 year left.
1 year left.
So my junior year I was in Japan. No, I was here just for a semester and a summer. So second semester and summer. And that's when I got my first Japanese boyfriend. And he was a surfer. Really cool guy.
He didn't become your husband.
No. But I realized, I like Japanese guys too. Because I mean, that makes sense. Because I grew up in Hawaii, so anybody who's a surfer, who looks kind of like local, yeah, okay. So anyway, then I went back to Boston, opened the newspaper, the Tufts Daily English newspaper, Everything's written in English, except on the right-hand bottom side, in very bold-face hiragana, it says, if you can read this, please come to an explanatory session. And I was like, I can read that. And it said, Kabushiki Gaisha Rikuruto, recruit, in hiragana. And so I was like, I can read that. So I went to the session. The girl, I'm going to say girl because she was like 24 years old, just a little bit older than me, didn't speak English, from recruit to try to, recruit people in the US. And I was like, oh my gosh, that totally changed the impression I had of Japanese companies. If they're going to send a young lady who doesn't speak the language overseas to find people to work at the company, I'm like, that's really breaking some barriers. I would like to work at that company. So I ended up getting an offer, and that's how I got to Japan.
Okay. Wow. What year was that? That was 1987?
That was 1988.
88?
Yes.
Okay.
They didn't even have the visas for us yet. So most of the people hired at that time were sort of like mid-career professionals or like senseis, professors. So they rarely hired new grads from the US or from any other country.
Right.
The new grads were in Japan, right? That you hire your new grads in Japan. So it took a while to get a visa. We had 10 of us that came.
But you'd already graduated.
I had graduated, so I waited in Hawaii for about half a year for the visa to get through. And then I came, and then the first thing, I was in the General Affairs Department, and my kacho came over to me, my manager, and nobody really spoke English, but he tried to speak English-style Japanese to me. Lucy, totemo daiji na hanashi ga arimasu. Like really slow Japanese, trying to make it sound like English so I could understand, because I had learned daily Japanese, but not business Japanese. So it was really hard for me to keep up at the beginning. But he said, a really important thing I have to tell you is, unfortunately, our president got arrested last month. So we have no time to like really teach you anything. So just sit over there and consider this a learning experience. And I'm like, okay. So I did that. And I just did what I could. And I instead of sinking, I swam. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. And the recruit people are so energetic, really loud voices. They all are very brave and bold. The women are strong, the men are strong. And I was like, I found my place.
How long
That's
were you
how
with
I felt.
How long were you with
Oh,
them?
4 years.
4 years. What did you do after that?
After that, I decided I wanted the HIV/AIDS big event I was involved in. I also got into TV a little bit. I just decided I kind of wanted to do, because I was married by that point. And how
long after being with recruit did you get married?
So I met my husband in recruit. So he was also recruit. And ended up getting married. And then I was like, I kind of want to do something a little bit more socially minded, I thought. So that's when I did the HIV/AIDS thing. And then I also, somebody told me that it's fun to be an extra in like Japanese movies and things, and it's a little bit extra income. So I started doing that, and at that time there were very few Western females who spoke some Japanese. So I started getting all these jobs, I'm a reporter on this movie called Gameratsu. Like people still see it. So yeah, I did that. And then I thought, when you're sort of like, I don't know, like a gainojin or something, and you're in an agency, I felt like, I'd rather be on TV when I'm an expert in something. I don't want to be someone who just does anything. Like, I really want to learn something. I want to be an expert on something. And at the same time, I had started my first translation and interpreting company, just myself working from home.
But no kids yet?
No kids yet.
Okay.
And then I started having my kids. So my first child was born in 1994.
Okay.
And then 1998. So while my kids were small, I was doing interpreting and translation from home, and then getting babysitters to go do it. So like I got to interpret for Jesse Jackson, I got to interpret for Joe Montana, I got to interpret for Monica Seles, I got to interpret for Serena Williams. When she won, so I was the official press interpreter for the Toyota Princess Cup for 5 years, and so all the big tennis players, the women tennis players would come, and when she won, I got to say, okay, so you can tell everybody, 今日はありがとうございました. And she was practicing many times. So, I got to meet all these really interesting people. The director for Michael Jackson's tour, when he came over, I got to interpret for him.
Not the last time?
No, it was kind of...
The first time he came.
It wasn't off the wall. It was the Thriller. It was a Thriller tour after Thriller.
Was it when he was at Tokyo Dome?
No, that was when...
That was the first time he came.
Yeah, it wasn't Tokyo Dome. I interpreted when he was in Fukuoka.
Okay, Fukuoka.
In Kyushu, yeah.
Right.
But I never got to see him or meet him because he was very,
Right.
hidden. Like no one ever got to see him. But I got to speak with the director, and I got to see all the drama that happens before one of those concerts. Until the very last minute, they're still negotiating like pricing and tickets and things like that. Yeah, it's very interesting. So I got to have that wonderful experience. And then a little bit before I planned, like I wasn't thinking about going back into the corporate world for a while, but Ezoe-san called me because we had been so Recruit, Ezoe-san, the guy who made Recruit, we had stayed in touch, and I had done some interpreting work, translation work for him.
And he was out of jail now.
He never actually went to jail.
I mean, he was house arrest or whatever it was.
Yeah, so his trial was the longest in history, so it was 13 years. And I actually stood as one of his witnesses at the end.
He's still alive now, isn't he?
No, he passed away.
When did he pass away?
Like 7 years ago? Yeah.
How old was he when he passed?
78, 79.
Oh, it had to be stressed then.
Actually, the way that he left this planet is probably the exact way he wanted to leave the planet. He had just finished skiing in Morioka, and he had come back on the bullet train, and he must have been feeling a bit dizzy, and he went out, and unfortunately he fell on the platform and hit his head and went into a coma, and that's how he left. So his last thing was skiing with friends.
Doing something to enjoy.
Yeah, that's what he liked
At
to
70?
78 or 79,
Wow.
yeah. So anyway, he had really sort of thought that maybe, I don't know, there was some potential in me or something, so he had really tried to mentor me. And so out of the blue he calls and he says, you know what, I've been to Hong Kong, New York, different places, and I see these things called serviced apartments where there's furnished apartments that people can rent from 1 month. And right now for business people coming to Japan, they only have 2 choices, either a 2-year lease with no furniture or a long-term stay in a hotel. I want to start this serviced apartment. And I think there was 1 Oakwood at the time. And he's like, do you think that's a good idea? And I said, yeah, that's a great idea. And he's like, right? And I didn't realize at the time, the whole board of directors was totally against the idea. And I was the only one, because they had basically been real estate developers.
Right.
They had not been in the hospitality industry. You know better than anyone else what a big jump it is from selling apartments to actually like hospitality is totally different. And he said, yeah, right, it's a good idea, right? Can you come help me? So that's when I started at Space Design. It doesn't exist anymore. It's now owned by Kenedix, which is a big real estate company, but basically started with Ezoe-san, this new project of serviced apartments. And we went from 250 rooms when I started to 1,200 rooms, and I was in charge of sales.
What period of time?
12 years.
12 years.
And I was totally in charge of all the sales. I ended up sitting on the board. I got to work directly with Ezoe-san and learn all about his management style, and that was really what became the foundation of everything that I do.
Was he married and had
He
family?
had 2 daughters.
Okay.
Estranged.
Okay.
Yeah.
Both of his daughters were estranged?
No, estranged with his wife.
Oh, with his wife. But his daughters, was he close with his daughters?
Yeah, he was close with his
That's
daughters.
good.
His daughters are really, really smart, wonderful ladies.
Or were they your age or were they younger?
A little bit older, I think, than me.
Little bit older,
Maybe
okay.
about the same age, yeah.
Okay, all right.
And then his wife is also a fantastic, wonderful, entrepreneurial person herself. I don't really know what happened, but they ended up splitting up, I think. But so I was more involved just with him, and learning from him. And he's yelling at me about doing something wrong, and I told you to do this. Why did you not do this? And I'm like, I can't change the contract that quick. So the thing that I learned about him that I really even use now is the ability to change with the market quickly. So he wasn't changing because he wanted to change personally. He was changing policies and trying to change contracts and trying to change the direction of the company to fit with market changes. And I thought it sounds really easy to do, but it's not easy to do.
It cannot be.
No.
Because you can't be sure it's really going to go the direction you think it's going to go in.
Yeah, and he would just study and read and gather information. He would read like 5 newspapers every morning and just talk to people. And when we were in taxis, he would really talk to the taxi driver about, what's going on, what do you think? And yeah, I really learned a lot from him. I'm so grateful. He was like my dad,
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was really good.
Tell me this. You've done all those things now. Where are you right now? What are you doing right now at this point?
Well, so it kind of all comes together, right? Like in the end, you think, okay, that was the path, So through the real estate, we were basically serving international visitors to Japan that were here for business. So they would stay 1 month to 3 months, right? And so during those 12 years, when I calculated it, directly or indirectly, I was in touch with about 40,000 different business people coming from all different countries, all different languages, with a common bond to somehow working in Japan. And through that, I got to see how difficult it is for them to go into like a soba shop or to anything. So they're like, I'd like to buy a pearl for my wife. Where can I buy a pearl in Japan? So there was one place that I knew about. I'd say, well, there's one on the corner in Roppongi. They're like, what's Roppongi? You know? So you realize it is so difficult for them to access all this wonderful content that exists in Japan. So we would make all these like handbooks when they move into the room. There would be all these pictures of, this is the kind of soap you use for dishwashing. This is the kind of soap you use for, you know, washing your clothes. So with a photo, so that when they go shopping, you get, because how can you tell the difference if you can't read those labels? Like, how do you know the difference between dishwashing soap and soap for your washing machine? Or like, you wouldn't know coming from the US that all washing machines work in cold water here in Japan, right? So like, very small details, but they're very, very big things too. Like, where is Hokkaido? You know, where is Kyushu? Like, I would like to go to the mountains in Japan. Where should I go? And then you say, well, you know, there's mountains nearby. Like, how do I find it? Right? So I thought there's gonna be a huge requirement by everyone in Japan to be able to access these people who have money, want to spend it, want to explore, but just don't know how to get there, like to bridge that. And so that's what my company does.
Ruth, what I like to ask at the end of a podcast is this question. If you could magically go back in time and meet the younger Ruth,
Yes.
and give her advice, what advice would you give her, and how old would she be?
She'd be about 9. She would be about 9, and I'd say, believe in yourself. You can do it. Just be yourself. You're perfectly fine as you are. Don't feel like you have to change. You know, you don't have to go to the beach every week and try to get a suntan, because you cannot get a suntan. I would go because all my friends would get so beautiful suntans, because, you know, they're all like local Hawaii people, right? And I'd be putting oil on my body and trying to get suntan. I just get so red I can't even go to school, you know? So I would be like, you know, you are good as you are. And you just keep doing what you like to do. If you like to read, read. If you like to study rocks, study rocks. You know, do what you like to do. Learn, 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 and you are going to have a great life.
That's beautiful.
That's what I would like to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast. Make sure you press like and subscribe. And never forget, it's all on loan, so continue to reach for the stars.
Because you are too blessed to be stressed.